Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Potcotter, and you're listening to CallTalk for September 29th, 2021. Today's topic is management challenges in an at-home work environment. If you're listening, we invite you to be part of the show and ask questions. Here's how you do it. You can email me at calltalk@benchmarkportal.com. I want to remind everyone that all of our shows are archived and available to listen to at benchmarkportal.com any time of the day. And with that, I would like to introduce the host of the show, Bruce Belfiore.
Thank you, Alan, and welcome back to Call Talk, everyone. Well, one of the things that's going on now is a ton of management challenges in the work-at-home environment that the pandemic has left us with. And so we have an expert to talk to about that, and he'll probably also veer off in other interesting directions for us. This is Bob Kobek, and I'd like to just introduce Bob to you. He's actually been on Call Talk previously, but for anybody who didn't hear him previously, I encourage you to listen to his prior interviews with me on Call Talk. Prior to forming Mobius Vendor Partners, which is his company, in October of 1999, Bob spent more than 30 years in direct marketing for industry and government. He's designed more than 150 outbound telemarketing, inbound customer service, and order processing operations. In 2007, Bob and Mobius launched CustomerCount, a cloud-based survey solution which provides intuitive real-time reporting. It's designed for the contact center industry. Bob is a member of the American Resort Development Association and sits on numerous committees. He's a longtime board member of PACE, the Professional Association for Customer Engagement, and he attended Holy Cross College at Notre Dame, Go Irish, in Indiana, and Indiana University. Now, BenchmarkPortal, as many people know, has its roots at Purdue University, but somehow Bob and I have been friends anyway. I've got to say that Notre Dame crushed us on this year's matchup. Bob, you haven't gloated about that too much, so I really appreciate that.
Well, Bruce, there's one big reason, and that is because the Notre Dame-Purdue rivalry, which goes back to the, 40s, maybe even earlier, is one of the best rivalries in the history of college football. And the other is that it is probably one of the cleanest rivalry games either teams will play. They always both play up for each other. They both play, better than they probably should. But it's always a clean game. I mean, it's always a fun game to go to. And if it's in West Lafayette or South Bend, it's just such a great football tradition. So I'm not going to gloat. Even I remember one time when Bob Greasy just absolutely demolished the Irish. I know I'm going back a few years, but, I appreciated my friends from Purdue not gloating over that one.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's one of the great cross-state rivalries. And anyway, and you're a gentleman and, not to gloat, so thank you for that. Well, let's talk about this management challenges in a work-at-home environment. I know that's something that you and I have talked about also on your podcast, and that you have talked to many people about and thought deeply about. So give us some of your thoughts on that, and we'll take it from there.
Bruce, we, among other things, Mobius, thanks for the lift about the CustomerCount, the survey system, because what's kind of key about that is that we also have an employee experience platform. So not only have we helped our clients move their agents to remote status, but we also then can continually measure how they're doing. The technology today is so strong and so sophisticated that it actually, measures the performance, and you can see performance going up and down, but you can't measure what's behind it. And so we have developed a platform to do that now so that we don't make this into too much of a commercial. One of the things I found when our clients called us and said, help us move to remote status, remote location, some of those are the same clients that just 2 or 3 years ago were saying, over my dead body, will I do that? Mm-hmm. And what they're finding now is if they start to look at the bottom line and begin to and begin to assess the ROI, they can actually get more competitive in their pricing. And what I'll make a prediction here is that if this trend continues, it will help U.S. call centers compete with offshore in pricing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
interesting.
I think this could be a job creator.
Right. Yeah, I mean, let's just peel that onion apart a little bit, because one of the things next week is Customer Service Week, as you know, and we're putting out a video. And one of the things that I'm noting is that the technology for this at-home work has not always been here. I mean, this is something that, 20, 30 years ago didn't exist. Then there was a company called Willow that kind of started making things distributed a bit. And then it got better and better and better with cloud-based. And so the capacity was actually in place when the pandemic hit. Think for a minute, if the pandemic had hit, 10 or 15 years earlier, we would not have been nearly as prepared as an industry to respond to that. But because of the capacity of today's technology to be installed and to be pushed out very quickly, that we were able to do that. It's really pretty extraordinary to think about that.
Well, and by quickly, Bruce, I'm talking about tens of thousands of agents went into remote status within weeks of that pandemic, and that's because, the cloud-based, and particularly the cloud-based, but even the on-prem premise technology, was capable of pushing it out. Of course, the online stuff is always going to be, stronger. And not only that, but 5 years ago, the VoIP technology was not as good as it is today. The quality of the voice, the quality, the ability to manage and manage that dialer didn't exist as it does today, because the call center technology companies they continue to invest, which they need to, because they also need to help the industry stay ahead of what's going on. Nobody predicted the pandemic, but everybody predicted TCPA, for instance. So all of that, all those things still had to apply, whether that agent was on site or remote.
Right, absolutely. And one of the other things that I mentioned in this video we're doing for Customer Contact Week is that really our industry has a lot to be proud of in terms of having opened its arms to a lot of people and changed their lives. So in terms of being open to diversity, I mean, our industry was employing people, women and immigrants and, people from all backgrounds a lot earlier than a lot of others, and served as a mode of social mobility. Specifically as it regards this at-home thing, we have been able to really open arms to disabled people. And there are, thousands and thousands of disabled people who are working very happily and productively from home now that, the technology now allows for. And similarly, there are parents and also people who have elderly parents who need to take care of them who can work from home. And actually, that started before the pandemic, right? And the sort of the magic of that and the capability of that was recognized even more during the pandemic, I think. And so, as you said, having the flexibility to do some things here in the United States has been increased as a result of all this.
Well, there's a huge underserved market that is still available to our industry, that our industry is still not taking advantage of, and because of the technology and the ability to work remotely, is that we are not bringing in the spouses of active military. If you think about active military, they're on a base for maybe 2 years. Can they get a job? Do they have a career path? Well, no, not really. So the jobs that they're able to get are not the jobs that it may not even be enough to feed their family. And if they have a family, they don't have the flexible hours that our contact center industry could offer them. So even if you are 200 miles away from a military base, you can still recruit directly on that military base. And I would also tell you that Michelle Obama and Joe Biden, that was one of their really big initiatives that they pushed forward was getting tax breaks and tax advantages for hiring spouses of militaries, active military.
Yeah. Actually, if I could just dovetail on that, and this goes back to research we did back when John Anton was with us here at BenchmarkPortal. And by the way, I just saw him yesterday. He's doing very well in retirement. But he, we discovered that by overlaying a database of performance metrics of call centers with demographic database that came from C.B. Richard Ellis, that there were certain characteristics of the of the communities that had the best performing centers. And they were things like they weren't in the center of cities, they weren't out in the middle of nowhere, they tend to be somewhere in between. They were communities that had a community college but not necessarily a four-year college there. A whole series of things. They had fairly high unemployment rates, et cetera. One of the things that stuck out in terms of successful places were places that had military installations nearby and employed military spouses. And so it's not just a nice thing to do. They actually are key, one of the ingredients for success of these centers. So what you're saying is absolutely right.
And because of the technology, Bruce, today there's one more add-on to that, advantage to that, and that is when the spouse's military tour is up, and they move back to Iowa or they move back to North Carolina, they take their job with them. You don't necessarily lose them. So there is that career opportunity that, just because they're working at Fort Hollabard, Maryland, doesn't mean that they can't keep their job when they move back home.
That's a great point, and something that wasn't available back when we did the first original research. So
that's right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point. Yeah.
So you minimize your turnover.
Right.
And after all, the one constant that's always been true in the contact center industry, no matter what your technology, minimizing turnover is always the goal. I mean, that and, of course, one call resolution, but that's a great stretch goal. But minimizing your turnover, the most expensive chair in a call center is an empty chair.
Yeah,
and
you got that right. You got that right. And so why don't you go through some of the elements of how to minimize turnover, starting from the recruiting and going all the way through. That'd be kind of, I think, really instructive.
Well, when you think about recruiting, I mean, you have to ask yourself the question, how many people leave from the time that they have signed up and they come in and you train them, but they don't get on the phone?
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
You then have to break down, you have to really hardcore analyze how you're doing the recruiting. Because, it goes back to, it's in a way it's like buyer's remorse. Did you tell the absolute truth when you were recruiting? And you got to tell the absolute truth. The other thing is that you've got to be able to promise them, and you got to really deliver on this, that you're going to seek their feedback all the way through the process. You're always going to be asking the questions. How are you doing? Are you getting along with your supervisor? Is your supervisor being helpful? One of the things that is really, really, really prevalent today that, again, wasn't prevalent 10 years ago was the unplanned turnover. Today, the latest study that we did showed that 60% of people that are employed today are looking for a new job. 60.
Wow.
And so we have this thing of, preference employment now.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm working for you. That doesn't mean I prefer to be working for you, and that doesn't mean I'm going to stay there.
Right. Yeah, and just going back to the, who is it you're trying to attract and screen to get into the job to begin with? That's where, companies that really are trying to do better and better will do organized and sort of structured statistical studies of who they let in. So who are the people, how did they do on personality tests, how they do on skills tests, all those kinds of screening things that they did, language capabilities, for instance, which, there's some newer opportunities to get good language skills testing. And, to make sure that you're getting people in who are less likely to fail. You're going to try to really hire for success. And then, what you're talking about is being truthful on what it's all about. And maybe you could just talk for a second about realistic job previews and how those can be really helpful in terms of making sure you're getting the right people in, sitting them down.
Well, the days of if you can fog a mirror, you can get a phone. Are those are kind of quickly passing because there aren't that many people that can fog a mirror anymore that want to fog a mirror, and so you got to make sure that that's what causes you to need to be more careful about who you're going to bring in, and the adage too, Bruce, and this is one that I know how many times have you had to fire a top producer? Because of the cancer that they can spread for everybody around them. And so another reason you got to be careful is you got to find somebody that understands that if they're that good, they're in a leadership position, they're in a leadership role. The number one retention factor that you can offer, and it's hard to do in our industry, and that's career development.
Mm-hmm.
You could go from being on the phone to being a supervisor. Well, it's like any factory. You only have so much inventory that you can produce. You got 8 hours in a day or 12 hours in a day. You've got 2 shifts. You've got X number of hours, period. And there's nothing you could do about that. And so you have to then make sure that in those hours you're more and more productive. And so then you got to make sure that you are showing people how they're going to grow. Now that may mean you're going to have to bring in some outside influences, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, that gamification is presents such a great opportunity in the call center industry, because maybe I won't be a supervisor next week, but I can beat the heck out of the rest of my team in a contest that we're doing, and be rewarded for it. So don't ignore gamification. The other thing is that be mindful of the work-life balance for employees, that because you need somebody to be filling a chair on that second wave in your call center doesn't mean that you want to force somebody to work there, because they may have kids at home. And you got to be mindful of the fact that, you want to try to place them in such a way that their work-life balance isn't out of whack, because that's another reason for turnover.
Right. Yeah, and obviously the at-home model offers more flexibility in terms of work-life balance. If you kind of put together being able to work from home, and by the way, the first Agent Voices report that we did showed that the most satisfied people correlated statistically with the people who were at-home workers. They were the most satisfied. And in fact, one of the things to keep in mind when you're doing a strategy toward attracting and recruiting people is that the farther people have to commute, the less likely they are to be satisfied. Now, that doesn't happen with every individual, so you can't. But statistically speaking, those who have the shortest commutes or no commute tend to be the most satisfied, which is kind of interesting.
Well, and during the pandemic, what we found too, Bruce, is that the reverse of that started to become true too. The more time people spent at home, the more they got to thinking, I'm not going back to that office.
Right.
And so that's where the preferences, started to come in. That said, you know what, I love my house. I love my family. I want to be here more often, and there's plenty of things I can do and plenty that I can do to work out of my house. I don't need to come back to that office, and that has created the opposite challenge in the work-life balance.
Right.
Where they put more emphasis into their home life than their work life.
Yeah. Yeah, it does help, when you are a manager saying, okay, we have this unexpected volume, and I need to, quote unquote, call people in to cover, right? And it's one thing to have to call people in to have them get in their car, get changed, get in their car, drive in, and all that kind of stuff. It's another thing to have them, sit in their pajamas at home and flip a switch to help out in an emergency. It's just so much easier to do the latter, and flexibility. So if you have that kind of flexibility, plus allowing people to swap, shifts, which is something that had become more popular even in an office environment, and just a lot of communication between managers and agents, you can come up with those at-home flexibilities that can make life easier and make it more pleasant as well.
Yeah, particularly with the continued development and technology of workforce management.
Yeah,
I mean that is getting more and more sophisticated, and which kind of then gets you into one of the other reasons why you lose people, whether they're at home or not, but mostly, period, and that's poor management behavior. Mm-hmm. I've been in call centers before where I was called in to consult, and when I go to consult in a call center, there's a couple of things I do every time, and one of the first things I do is I go sit in the call center, and I watch and I listen. Now, there's always that one or two people that say, if you're so great, why don't you get on the phone? And to which I point out to them, well, I'm happy to, but I bill out at $300 an hour. You tell me how I'm going to get paid, and I'll do it. But the thing that I have seen happen so many times is poor management, where and it goes to that how many times do you see the best person in a call center get kicked upstairs to be a manager, sales go down, and the manager gets fired, and you've lost your top guy. Well, it's because you didn't train them and you didn't teach them on how to be a manager. That there's a certain level of professionalism that to manage, particularly people in a call center, be it remote or not, that you have to have. There are just some skills that are required in management, and it goes to that elusive, what does it take to be a good leader? I mean, the books are written on that. Every day I see a new adage, I see a new something, whatever. To me, being a good leader is knowing how to shut up. But that's just me.
Listen. Yeah. No, you're right.
There's much listening. My daughter is one of the very few deaf clinical psychology PhDs in the world. And one of the things that I asked her, the question, how is it that a deaf person, I realize that you are a very accomplished woman. I get that. But how did you do that? What was how did you accomplish that when you can't hear? And her answer was really like mind-blowing, simple. I'm a good listener. You don't need to hear anything to be a good listener. And son of a gun, that put a lot of things in place for me.
Wow, that's something. Good for her. Hats off. Congratulations.
Yeah, she's a smart girl, but she's also a great teacher. And that was one of those things that I thought, well, here I am, the father of a deaf PhD, and I couldn't figure that out myself. So obviously she's smarter than her dad. One of the other things I want to make sure that we talk about, because it always comes up, and that's the compensation. Interestingly enough, what we have found is that compensation actually lines up as the fourth reason people leave. Not the first, not the second, not the third. It's the fourth. Mm-hmm. And you got to make sure that you're paying a fair wage. And if you're going to save money by using remote agents, then why not share it with them? Why not pay them more? I'm a big believer in paying people more, particularly a job that's as hard as in a call center. There's nothing simple, nothing easy in a call center. One of the best things that could happen in a call center is the omni-channel opportunities right now, where one agent can take phone calls, answer emails, do a click-to-chat. And so the more variables that you can give them in their workday, the better off you are. Yeah. Because it does give them some career pathing. It does give them some variety versus that if you're making an outbound sales presentation and you're calling, your dialer is hitting 60 people an hour, 70 people an hour, and you're doing 40 presentations and you get 35 no's. Well, it's no wonder they smoke and drink. I mean, that's a lot of rejection in an hour, and then in a day, and then in a week, and then in a month. So vary what you have them doing. Give them other opportunities. And again, gamify. I'm a real believer in gamification, Bruce. Can you tell?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's a great thing. And along with something you touched on earlier, which is training, because, in terms of that elusive leadership thing you mentioned, and, it's something that can be taught, at least up to a point where somebody can be successful as a supervisor, successful as a call center manager. And unfortunately, still what we see happening all the time is that people will get promoted because they're good at the jobs that they're in, and somehow somebody who's a really good agent is supposed to become a good supervisor simply because you give them the title. And that doesn't work. And one of the things that we saw during the massive shift over to at-home environment during the pandemic was that the demand for our on-demand courses, including for supervisors, coaches, managers, etc., really went up. And that's because people realized, okay, I can't give these people training in the office anymore. And maybe I wasn't even doing it before the pandemic, but I know now that I can't have people home and just assume that they're going to know how to be good supervisors, how they're going to be good leaders. They need some training in doing that. And, I think that's just so important to put into the mix so that the people that we're counting on to be the linchpins, be the cornerstones of the call center in terms of leading it and, giving counsel and coaching to agents and others is really covered well.
Well, and training the agents is equally, the typically we look at our call center technology, and the call center technology people will tell you these are the key performance indicators that you always want to track. And those key performance indicators are things like average talk time, how often you showed up, the things that a machine can track.
Right.
So we, one of the things that we throw into that mix, and I will say too that our competitors throw into the mix, is a whole different set of key performance indicators. And those key performance indicators are coming from the voice of the customer. And so if the voice of the customer says to me, through my surveying, my post-call surveying, my call was not resolved. My issue was not resolved. But in that contact center technology, the disposition code says resolved, and that's what that agent hits, resolved. There's a disconnect here, an automatic disconnect. And so I want to know from that customer what was not resolved, why wasn't it resolved? Was it a lack of knowledge? Was it a lack of initiative? Was it a lack of? And so there's a whole different set of key performance indicators that should be measured and applied to the existing call center technology KPIs. A good example of that is the one that I believe it was Gartner came up with, and it gets asked in every one of our surveys, and that is the customer effort score. How easy or hard was it to do business with Bob Kobek? Well, if my score on a 7-point scale, I'm consistently showing a 3, that tells me I'm making it hard for people to do business with my company, which then also tells me that that's a loyalty factor and they're not coming back. So I need to go talk to Bob and find out why is he making it so hard.
Yes.
But it gives me a specific place to train on. It gives me a specific area of need, and it will probably lower my turnover.
All of those things, all those good things can happen. That's great. Well, we're at the bottom of our half hour at this point, so unfortunately we're going to have to close it there. But this has been great. You and I could, talk for hours, as we both know. But
well, what's cool, Bruce, is that we have.
What's that? Yes.
Yes, we have actually.
We have. You totaled it all up, and we have.
Well, you know what? I'm a real fan of benchmark portals, and so any time I can throw my hat in the ring with you, I will.
Same the other way. I feel the same way about you and you guys. So thank you very much for that. And what we'll do now is we'll turn things over to Alan. But thank you very, very much, Bob, for once again sharing your insights with us. Really good session. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Alan?
Bruce.
Okay.
Thanks again to both of you guys for your insights and another great show. We hope you can join us next month for another great show or look at our huge selection of archived shows on hot topics at BenchmarkPortal.com. Then click on CallTalk where you'll find over 12 seasons. From all of us at Benchmark Portal, keep those headsets steady and your fingers ready. Stay safe and stay healthy. This is Alan Potcotter signing out. Have a good one.